Hello and welcome to DFS Coach Talk. It is Wednesday, June 30th, 2021. I'm Andrew Hansen alongside Joe Sarvati, affectionately known as Coach. And man, what a surprise last night, Coach. Trey sits, Lou Williams starts and smashes. Atlanta's up big, and then Giannis goes down right when he's leading that comeback in the third quarter. What an unfortunate twist for Giannis and the Bucks.
It really was tough to watch, and prayers out to Giannis for sure. I mean, it looked like a stereotypical ACL tear when the knee goes that direction. I mean, that's what I've seen in the past. I hope I'm wrong, but yeah, I mean, it adds to what has been a common theme throughout these playoffs. It's almost like, who can have the last five guys standing at this point?
Yeah, exactly. And we'll have a team tonight that's in the best spot for that, Phoenix.
Yeah.
But this being Wednesday, Coach, we should announce we're going to do a little twist on the show today. We've often done a two brains lineup, whether it be a hybrid or a GPP, but on a small slate like this in a showdown, it's so hard to agree on a lineup in the correct order, especially at this stage with the questionable Zubats news. So what we're going to do for fun today, everybody, is we're going to try to guess each other's hybrid lineup at this point in the day. We're recording this in the morning, so as of now, Zubats is questionable. And then we're going to use that as a way to get into some of our analysis using last game and trying to project what the adjustments might be tonight for each team here in Game 6. And then we'll go through team by team, Phoenix and Clippers, and continue to work through the build. So, Coach, if you're ready, I am going to take a shot at what I think your hybrid lineup on FanDuel is at this point in the day.
Terrific. And let's make sure that the listeners know we're under the assumption for Andrew and I at this moment that Zubats will not play.
Correct.
So that's the big thing, because as we know, and we talked about on the last podcast, if he does play without limits or whatever the case, the dominoes start to fall. So we wanted to do it this way so that nobody got stuck with the two brains lineup if Zubats is in or out. So this will hopefully give you a good view. Now, listen, make sure you tune in for the non-members to YouTube. Twitter, because we'll be posting some updates with Zubats in and out, because that will affect these picks big time.
Absolutely. All right, so here's my shot, Coach. Ready?
Okay,
For FanDuel,
I'm ready. I'm looking at it, and I won't lie. I've got my team right in front of me.
All right, so at the top, I think you're going to go with Paul George.
No, full fade. Just kidding.
It really came up big in Game 5.
Yeah.
Then
No-brainer.
I think you're going to go with your man Booker next.
I did not.
Ooh, okay. First twist. Here's what I had for you. I had Booker and then Paul.
I have Paul and then Booker.
Okay.
So you were almost hit it.
Okay. And then after that, I think you're going to fill out the utility spots with Cousins and Cam Johnson.
Double X's.
No way.
I swear. I went Jay Crowder, Cameron Payne.
Wow. Very interesting. Okay.
Yes.
Suns. Lots of Suns in that lineup.
Suns four-man stack with Paul George sitting at the top of the heap there. I just think, the Clippers were just a Herculean performance this last time around. But, I just think Phoenix comes out. I think this will be a much better scoring game than that last one. It was like 80-80 with a minute left. So I think you'll see a little bit more fire from the Suns this game.
Yeah, the last time they played in LA, it was very low scoring. And this one is back in LA. By the way, 9 o'clock Eastern tip for Game 6 on ESPN. All right, Coach. Well, I didn't do as well as I thought I would do. Why don't you take a shot at what you think my hybrid lineup is?
That was still close, though. I think you went Paul George, Chris Paul 1-2.
Who do you think I went number 3? Because Paul is not second for me.
Wow. I'm going to say Ayton.
Correct.
So you went George, Ayton, Paul?
That's what I've got right now.
Yeah. And then I think you use Cousins.
Yep.
So that leaves how much money?
8,000.
And then I can zing you right square on the nose here. I'm going to say your last guy in was Cam Johnson.
I've got Crowder right now.
Oh,
So
do you?
I
Okay.
actually spent all the money on this one, and I've got Crowder. So
Oh, okay. Usually you always leave 500 or 1,000 on the shelf, so that's why I went down, or I would have had it.
yeah, very
Doggone it.
close.
Yeah.
Bravo, well done. And the one of the reasons I thought this would be fun is because obviously we've debated Ayton, Paul, and Booker all season long,
Right.
and we've been on the same page primarily of oftentimes fading them because they're so balanced. And
Right.
then with Crowder and Cam Johnson, I think that's going to be an important decision tonight. And I'm up in the air on it.
Yeah.
Johnson played better than Crowder last game, but Crowder usually gets more minutes and more shots. So
Right.
I wanted to, bring up those, areas that we have to work through right at the
Yeah.
top, and then let's work backwards. So let me get started on the Phoenix side,
Sure.
and then you can do all the Clippers work, and I want to see what your thoughts are on Phoenix after I describe what happened last game, which is that the Clippers changed their defense. They went to
Mm-hmm.
a zone defense,
And
and
that's why I went back to Booker.
yeah, that
But I agree.
that changed everything. Booker, it was almost like Pat Beverly, who had been draped all over him for the
Yeah.
games before that and completely shutting him down. It was almost as if, they thought one of the other guys had COVID and they had to keep their distance. I mean, Beverly was never anywhere close to Booker. I mean,
No.
if you remember, one of the standout moments of that game was Beverly's flagrant foul on Chris Paul because he was guarding him on
Right.
the perimeter. But you never saw him next to Booker. And Booker was
No.
roaming around freely, probably just excited as can
Well,
be.
he probably hasn't faced a zone in a long time
I
because
know.
Devin Booker against a zone, that's like playing zone against Steph Curry.
Yeah,
I
I mean,
mean,
it's like,
are they going to do it
celebrate.
again? That's the
Well,
question.
so right, that's the question. I mean, if I generally approach these things that if something's working, then the team that it's working for is going to keep doing it. I mean,
I
the
agree.
Clippers, they were terrific in that game. Big underdogs. We thought they were going to lose, but they made a drastic adjustment and it
They
worked.
did.
So why wouldn't they stick with it? I
Well,
mean,
I'm sure that the conversation went exactly like this, Andrew. Okay, listen, we can't be a donut in the middle and let Aiton get
right,
10 alley-oop dunks
exactly.
and they dominate the board. So let's assume that, by going zone, we're going to take a good portion of that away, but we know Booker's probably going to hit 7, 8 threes, but we'll live with that rather than
Exactly.
getting smashed in the paint.
Yeah.
And it worked. It worked.
Yeah, and they thought we'll give Booker his 30 points if he can get them. He's been shooting poorly, but we want to
Yes.
shut down Chris Paul and Aiton and shut down that pick and
That
roll in the
paint.
middle. Yeah, and
Yep.
so I
I
think
like the move, to
it
be
was
honest.
great.
I
Yeah,
I didn't expect it. I didn't think they'd have the courage to do it, but I thought it was a heck of a move.
yep. So that is the big question, and I'm thinking for those reasons that they're going to stick with it. It worked,
I agree.
and
That's
so
why I switched to Booker from Ayton because that
right,
exact reason. Now, if they come out in a stiff man with
Beverly
Beverly
on
back
Booker.
on, yeah, then I will start crying real tears.
Yeah.
But
Well, see, so that's what I wanted to get into, and I'm glad you look at it the same way. And so let's assume they stick with the zone. Is it going to be the right combination to go with Booker and Paul potentially, or does it make sense to consider Aiton? I mean, I think for me, Booker and Paul, if you're going to pick between them, it's a very hard choice today because if the Clippers stick with that zone, Booker's in an awesome spot again. But he is still, more scoring dependent. Chris Paul went 0 for 6 on threes. I don't think that's going to happen again. I mean, we know he's been struggling to find his legs, but I'm kind of looking at these guys like Chris Paul and Crowder. Crowder went 0 for 4 on threes. I just don't think they're going to go 0 for 10. And, no big crazy prediction there, but I just think it's a very close call between Paul and Booker today. And Aiton, I think they're going to have to find a way to get him more involved. If Zubats is out and they go small again with Morris, there's just no excuse for Aiton to get 9 shots. I don't care what zone they're playing. You just got to find a way to take advantage of that size advantage that he has and get him
Right.
involved. So I think Phoenix will counter, and they'll be more prepared for that zone if they see it again. With the bench, Cam Johnson. So, he's the first guy that we have to mention. He's getting the most minutes. He's been the most productive. The thing is, though, he went 3 for 3 on threes and he had 3 steals. And I think there's a decent chance that regresses a little bit. And that's why it feels like such a close call for me between Cam Johnson and Crowder, who, are very close in price on FanDuel. Johnson way cheaper on DraftKings. So that makes it easier if you want to go that route. And then with the other guys, they had pretty limited minutes. Saric, Payne, and Craig were all between 11 and 13 minutes. Then you had Nader with 9. So I think you could make an argument for one of those guys as your last guy in with those cheaper price tags to make it work. But what's your overall thought here on Phoenix and Booker versus Paul, and will Ayton play better, or will he continue to struggle against this zone if they stick with it?
Well, I mean, as we're doing this podcast in the morning, and we haven't got the news on Zubats, because again, that's going to change things for me. But I feel pretty confident, in my opinion, if the Clippers come back out in that zone again. I don't know how they're going to do anything to get Ayton the ball a lot more, because if you're in a zone, you've got a guy in front of him, a guy behind him. You have 2 guys already at the block to rebound, to take those lobs away and the offensive putback. So it worked, and I think that it helped the Clippers that the guys you mentioned did not make their threes,
right? Being
Paul and Crowder and et cetera. But I think they stick in the zone. They see if it works. If it continues to put them in the game, it eliminates Ayton for me, because I've always been a little negative on Ayton, because if it goes against them like it did in this last game, where they're bodying him, they're sort of double him with that zone and everything, he doesn't always show up. He has a tendency to fade into the sunset a little bit and not, impose his will. Now, he was when they were spread out, and he was playing better than he's played. But if they're going zone, I just think that I would rather spend my money elsewhere. Now, I think that you have to absolutely play Booker if if you game script it out that they're gonna go zone. He's one of the 5 best shooters, 3 best shooters in the entire league. So I love that pick, but I didn't put him as captain because we'll get to Paul George later. Paul George's usage numbers right now are off the charts. I mean, they're above. The only ones that were close to that was some of the Harden games when he was with Houston. I mean, it's that huge when he didn't have anybody else running with him. So, I mean, that's a no-brainer. But here's my reason for Chris Paul. He's not shooting the ball well. I get that. He's not a dead nuts three-point shooter anyways. But he just does so much. He's getting so many minutes. His assist to turnover ratio is always terrific. He had 2 turnovers this last game, which sort of
stopped the
stunning.
presses.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think he has to be included. I mean, his hands are on the ball, more than half the game. So he's in there, I think, is a no-brainer play for me. And then my big decision is really between 3 guys, and that's where I've not made the decision. Now, I know I said Cam Payne because I wouldn't mind being a little different there. And Cam Payne is really a good 3-point shooter. So if they stay in the zone and Payne gets 15 to 20 minutes, he only got 13 and 16 seconds this last game, he could make some threes fast. We've seen him score. But the other 2 guys that can also drain threes are Jay Crowder and Cameron Johnson. So you've got 3 good Suns there that you sort of have to make a decision on. They can all knock down the 3. And that's really what it comes down to for me. I know Bridges hasn't taken as many shots. I don't think he's as accomplished of a 3-point shooter as the other guys I mentioned, and he's more expensive than he should be. So for me, it's just go right straight to Booker and Paul, and then make the decision on who do you think can take advantage of this zone and knock down threes between Crowder, Payne, and Johnson. That's how I see the Phoenix side rolling out. And the other guys, interior play of a Saric or a Craig or Nate or any of those guys that are slice and dicers, I don't see the need for them. I don't see any of them getting over 12 minutes. And, specifically if they stay in the zone, that limits those guys as well.
Excellent. All right, Coach. Well, before we get to your Clippers breakdown, just want to invite folks to join us as members at dfscoachtalk.com and grab our lineups tonight. We'll have 3 lineups for FanDuel ready for you to play, 2 cash lineups, a GPP lineup. We'll have a full Yahoo lineup, and then our core on DraftKings for cash builds and GPP. So dfscoachtalk.com, you can grab a 3-day membership if you'd like, or take advantage of that 2-month offer. You can see that scrolling across now on YouTube. 111 is a nice discount. 2 months, you get baseball, basketball, and golf, all the lineups for 2 months. And then once you sign up, we will invite you into our Discord with an email. And that's when we give out the lineups about 20 minutes before lock. We'll have our golf podcast later today. So we'll have golf lineups tonight and baseball, of course, before the main slate. So join us this afternoon if you'd like. Coach, anything else there?
Yeah, if you're watching this on YouTube, we're super close, like literally a dozen subscribers away. So if you've not hit that subscribe button on YouTube, this is the day to do it, and hit that thumbs up as well. We really appreciate that. And while you're at it, there's a little alert button up in the corner. If you click that, then they'll give you an alert every time one of our podcasts posts. And as you know, we do 7-day-a-week podcasts for the NBA in front of the paywall. If there's basketball, we'll have a few days off as we go into the finals. And then we're going to start up with some Major League Baseball pods, and of course, followed by the NFL, which we cover wire to wire. So excited to be moving up that algorithm on YouTube, and we really appreciate that time you take by giving us that thumbs up and subscribe. If you just listen to our podcasts with these 2 mugs, probably a good idea. But if you listen and don't watch on YouTube, we're everywhere podcasts can be found: Spotify, Stitcher, Podbean, iHeart, Apple Podcasts, iTunes, you name it, we're there. Just take a second. We have actually 2 days left for our weekly, a free week is what I'm trying to say, at Coach Talk. We have a drawing at the end of each month for anybody that puts 5 stars and a quick comment. So Joe will be going through that. Stanton here, our man, in 2 days, and putting a randomizer on those folks. And then you'll be getting an email saying you've won a free week membership with Coach Talk. So appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right, Coach, talk to us about the Clippers tonight in Game 6. Do they stay alive? And if so, how do they get it done?
Well, I think, that is a great question. I think that Phoenix has a good shot here. I think this is going to be a down-to-the-wire game. I really do. I see definitely the potential of them closing things out, even though it's in LA, but I think it's going to be a great game. But here's the thing. Paul George, as I mentioned prior, just his usage, his amount of shots, how he's stepping up, they really don't have a solid answer for him. They've tried, Crowder and company, a lot of guys to play him, but he's just, he's just playing fantastic.
15 for 20. Last game, 15 for 20.
Yeah, and it's not like, there's going to be any giant regression. Now, I know you're not going to shoot 75% with people draped all over you, but I think he'll get more than 20 shots. That's my point. So if he goes, 13 for 28 even, something like that, I think with his, proficient shooting at the foul line, another 8 for 8 game there, and then 13 rebounds. He's been all over the glass.
Yep.
And 6 assists, 3 steals. He'll get you a block here and there. I just, it is what it is on some of these showdown slates. And I just think you put Paul George a captain and move on. I don't see any reason to not put him in that number 1 spot. So
on FanDuel and Yahoo.
Right, on
Yep.
FanDuel and Yahoo. Now, DraftKings, you got to think about it because of the pricing. That's
Right.
always the catch. But, certainly on DraftKings, you have to have them in your lineup. You can't fade them, even if you don't play him as captain. Did I say FanDuel? I meant DraftKings. So, yeah, that's really a no-brainer there. So after that is where, where do we look next? And that's been a mixed bag of tricks lately. Let's face it. I mean, you've got guys like me that love Morris. He stepped up 9 for 16 last game with 22 points. He's going to get big minutes. He got 38, and his health looked fine. I know there was some question that he was a bit dinged, but he's a gamer and he's going to play, so I think he'll get big minutes. Reggie Jackson, of course, has been the consistent second guy to George. So I think, he's your next guy in. Just obvious is obvious. I mean, you can't, just completely be contrarian just for the sake of being contrarian. But, I think you go George and then you look at Jackson and you have to consider Morris. Now, after that is where it gets confusing to me, Andrew. And you have seem to have a good feel for these tweener Clippers guys. But if you go with any of these guys, for me, it's very close. Man had a horrible game this last game, only played 26 minutes, even though, he started 2 for 8. I mean, just didn't get it done and didn't finish the game. So that's a concern. Pat Bev has been getting 30 minutes plus now, but, I'm not as confident if they stay in this zone that he gets quite that many minutes, because the goal for him, when they're playing man, is he's on Booker. So that's not a given. And then you got Nick Batum, who popped up with a 30-minute game. And again, he doesn't look for a shot, but he certainly can shoot the three and he can rebound. And of course, the guy I assumed you were going to take, which is definitely tempting, 7 for 12 is fantastic. 3 assists, a couple of rebounds, and he only played 11 minutes and 19 seconds, and that's DeMarcus Cousins. So, the question there is, if they do come out of the zone, and again, that's why we got to stay figuring this, but we're anticipating they start in the zone. Cousins is going to be the guy that they need to play more, because he'll have to lay a body on Ayton. So I do agree with you that there's some upside there, but 11 minutes and 19 seconds scares me. And if they're doing well in the zone, I just don't know if he gets much more run than that. And it's hard to get 12 shots up in only 11 minutes.
Yeah, only a handful of guys can do it. He's one of them.
That's right. Yes. So that's the concern I have there, which makes it pretty difficult. And then after that, again, I'm not going down there for Kennard or for anybody else, but it's a tough call. I mean, I'm all about George. My second guys are certainly Jackson and Morris, and then maybe nobody, because I am looking to probably go 4-2 or 4-1 Phoenix on my builds, which is unusual. I'm usually more split, but 4-2 I think is a good takedown number if you hit the right guys. A lot of people think you have to be 3-3 to get equal exposure. Now, I wouldn't go 5-1, because then that it gets a little impossible. But a 4-2 build Phoenix is what I'm leaning towards, and then a 4-1 or a 3-2 Phoenix, which may mean all those guys that I mentioned that are the bubble guys aren't going to quite make it for me.
Well, that's one way to deal with it, right? Just fade them all, because there is a lot of uncertainty and inconsistency with that group. So let me start with the big three here, the starters who took all the shots and shot so well. I mean, Paul George, in addition to him going 15 for 20, Reggie Jackson was 8 for 14. So he's better than 500 and better.
And those were some tough threes, too.
4 for 7 on threes, so over 50% there. Your man Marcus Morris, 9 for 16. So all three of them shot over 50%. And I think Phoenix, I mean, they're a defensive-minded team, very strong defensively all season. They're going to look at those numbers and say, this is just absolutely unacceptable.
An embarrassment.
It's an embarrassment. There's no way they're going to let all three of those guys shoot over 50%
and
again.
Cousins 7 for 12.
Right, exactly. That's the other number I have circled. So Morris, I mean, let's talk about him. First of all, I got to give you props, because you were all over him in the last game. It was terrific play. and he smashed. Now, here's the next question. Does Phoenix adjust to that? Because I just couldn't believe that he kept getting isolations in the post in that game against guys like Crowder, even some of the guards. He'd get in there on Booker.
Yeah.
They just didn't make sure that Ayton was there to defend him in the post. And I just don't understand why, because he kept taking that 12, 15-foot turnaround over whoever was defending him. And that's how he got hot, and they never adjusted. So I got to figure that Ayton finds a way to defend Morris more in the paint, and they make it more difficult for him. But the thing with Morris is his price on DraftKings is incredibly low. It's even lower than the last game.
I know, it doesn't make sense.
Here's one of the craziest things I've seen in a long time. I think he was sixth in points for DraftKings on the last game. Between Phoenix and Clippers, he had the sixth most DraftKings points. Do you know where he is in price? He's the 14th.
13th. Yeah.
He's 14th in price, but he was sixth in fantasy points. He got huge minutes, huge shots. I don't know why he wasn't adjusted more, but at 4,000, he's a guy that I think you have to have in your lineup on DraftKings, and he's a good candidate for the captain spot at that price. You can really make a lot of things work.
Right.
So that's
what you want to know my take on that Morris situation. I was thinking about it, and Monty Williams is a fantastic coach, by the way. I mean, he does a great job. I think he made the decision because it was blatantly obvious. I think when the Clippers came out with a lineup that they were starting, which was different than some people had thought it was going to be, I think Monty said, "Listen, if Marcus Morris Sr. beats us, that's a lot more acceptable than us letting Reggie and Paul George get open shots and open penetration. And we need Ayton on the floor. Morris is a monster foul drawer because he's so physical."
Yep.
And I think that they were concerned Ayton would get in foul trouble and he wouldn't be in position to help on George and Jackson with their penetration. So I know that there were several mismatches with Morris where it was actually Booker he was shooting over, but I think they'll adjust it, but not put Ayton on him for the reasons I stated. I think they'll adjust it and make sure that they at least get some passes with guys like Crowder or Batum when he's in, so that they can, not Batum, who's the other big guy I was thinking? Was either Crowder or one of the guys that at least can give him trouble. Even a Cam Johnson, he's thinner, but he's tall. Somebody, and a Bridges possibly. Again, that depends on the rotation. But I think you'll see an adjustment, but not where they're going to put a stopper on Morris. Because I guarantee you, if you ask Monty, would you rather, have Paul George and Jackson, Terrence Mann, those guys getting open shots or open penetration for mid-rangers, or have Morris hitting, those were tough shots, even though they were on Booker. They were like 15-foot fadeaways and, step backs and all of that. So you got to pick your poison a little bit with, all these talented players. And I think Morris is still going to be a key guy.
I think he is going to be key. And I agree. That was the game plan. They said, let's roll with it. And you ended up seeing Ayton on man a lot of the possessions.
Yeah.
And I agree. That was a way to keep him out of foul trouble and allow him to help.
Be the
but
floater. Yeah.
It didn't work. I mean, it did not work. So
it didn't.
That's what I would do if I were coaching. I would get Ayton more on Morris, and let's see how that goes. And I, put Crowder on man when they're in man.
If they do that, though, that's a little scary about Ayton with foul trouble, though. Yeah. I mean, that's just a whole nother twist, you know?
But he's done a great job of staying out of foul trouble in these playoffs.
Yeah, he has.
And if the Clippers are surveying the court and they see Ayton draped over Morris, I think they're going to be more hesitant to feed it to him in the post.
There's no question.
That's not a good matchup. I mean, it would have to be, can Morris use his quickness to get around Ayton? But in any event, with his price being so low, if Zubats is out again, even if he's not getting 16 shots on DraftKings at 4,000, I think he's right squarely in play.
He'll be, it's amazing as we got him so low owned last time, and now he's going to be one of the chalk plays.
Right. George, I agree. You get him in on DraftKings. one way or the other.
And
Reggie
Yahoo.
Jackson is a guy that I really like in this game, but his price a little challenging. So that's where you have to figure out if you're going to get a little more involved with the Phoenix studs, or if you want to make some room for Reggie Jackson. And then with the rest of the crew, I'll try to take a shot at it. I think it's challenging. I think you made a good point on Beverly. Does he lose a couple minutes here with the zone? Man, I think he'll play a little bit better. He just, he's a little inconsistent finding his way, finding his spots. But I think he can be more effective here. And then
I think the zone hurt him as well. Man definitely plays man better. You know what I'm saying?
I hear you. Absolutely. Cousins and Batum. So Cousins, I agree. 12 shots in 11 minutes is a lot. It seemed like they just, had him kind of paired up with Saric, and they once those two were out there together, they looked to attack that in the post, and he had a great success with Saric defending him, just overpowering him. So, he's playable for me because of the price and because of all the other things, to take into account. And then Batum, loved his minutes, 30 minutes, but like you said, he's not that involved offensively at times, but he can be. And his price is attractive, especially on DraftKings 3,000. So it's another way to, if you want to pay up for your stud at the captain spot, he's a guy to
two
to
shots
fill out
in
the
30
roster.
minutes,
Yeah.
though. My goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's scary.
Right. But probably going to fade Kennard as well. And then Rondo, again, didn't get any minutes. So
No, that surprised me.
all right, Coach. Well, there's the team-by-team breakdown. I enjoyed that, and I hope our listeners did as well.
Yeah.
There is a lot to consider here for Game 6 with the different rotation strategies. And then, of course, we'll get the little twist later in the day when we get the Zubats news, and we might have to start from scratch on this. But that's
Well, I mean, it's not a little twist. It's everything, because if they come out and say, you know what though, Andrew, it is an MCL sprain, and he's a big dude, lumbering dude. So I've got a feeling he's either out or majorly limited.
right.
But you never know. I mean, this has been such a wacky playoffs. They could say, he's in, we're going to play him 25 minutes. And if that's the case, pretty much everything we said on this podcast is sort of out the window, and you got to rebuild,
Yeah, I mean, it takes Cousins out of the picture most likely.
Right.
He's one of my key mid-tier value guys to consider tonight. And so that's the first domino that would fall. And then we'll sort it out from there if we have to. But that's another great reason to join us as a member. If you haven't already, give us a try. DFSCoachTalk.com. We'll invite you with an email. Any questions, you can find us on Twitter at DFSCoachTalk. You can follow the coach at JOESARVADI. Coach, I've got that one memorized. And
Hey,
you can
better than me.
Yeah, and you can follow me at Language Olympic. So thank you all for tuning in. On behalf of the coach and the rest of the DFS Coach Talk team, I'm Andrew Hansen. We'll see you tomorrow as we look to crush it in DFS.